On my 35th birthday, my family threw a lavish dinner at an upscale restaurant in downtown Atlanta. At first, I thought it was to celebrate me. Turns out they were all there to tell me I should just accept the fact that my little brother is sleeping with my wife. My name is Ethan, and that night, as I looked around the polished oak table in that softly lit private room, I realized something. I wasn't part of this family anymore. I was just a background character in a play they'd been rehearsing behind my back. And tonight was the final act. My mom, Beverly, sat to my right, wearing that smug, satisfied smile she always put on when things went exactly her way. My dad, James, kept quietly sipping his wine, eyes darting anywhere but mine, just like he always did when things got messy. My sister Lauren, she was texting under the table, probably updating the family group chat on my emotional progress. But of course, the real stars of the evening, just like always, were Logan, my younger brother, and Madison, the woman I once called my wife. They sat apart just enough to maintain the illusion of decency, but their eyes gave everything away. There was this invisible pull between them, like magnetic tension humming beneath the tablecloth, their bodies pretending distance, while their hearts already lived in the same room. Madison wouldn't even look at me. And Logan smiled, that same smug smile he's always used to charm his way out of everything. "Happy birthday, Ethan," he said, lifting a glass of red wine, his voice smooth as velvet. "You're the symbol of forgiveness, a man strong enough to love his family, even when they cross the unthinkable line." I let out a dry chuckle, just enough to hide the nausea rising in my throat. My water glass clinked against the table with a cold, sharp ting. And right there, in that frozen second, everything began to change. I've gotten used to this feeling, being on the sidelines of every family photo, even when I'm standing right in the middle of the frame. Ever since I was a kid, I knew I was different, but not the kind of special different, like the kids who got praised for straight A's or winning art contests. No, I was the difficult kind of different, too sensitive, too serious, too hard to figure out. Logan, on the other hand, he was everything I wasn't. Charming, funny, effortlessly magnetic. The kind of person my mom would call the pride of this family. Beverly, my mother, was a sharp, calculated woman who knew how to turn compliments into knives. When I got a full-ride scholarship to college, she said, "Ethan may be smart, but if you learn to socialize like Logan, you'd actually go far." When I failed my first investment deal at 28, she didn't call to comfort me. She called to remind me, "I told you, you overthink everything. Logan adapts, you're rigid. It exhausts people." My dad was gentle, practically invisible. He never stood up for me when Mom went too far. Never said a word when Logan crossed the line with his teasing. Silence was his default, as if pretending nothing was wrong would somehow make it true. Lauren, my older sister by 3 years, was the only one I ever truly trusted. Until high school. That's when I found out she'd given my journal to Mom. She said, "You need help, Ethan. You wrote some really alarming stuff." From that moment on, everything I felt was treated like a mental health red flag. I grew up with labels: emotionally fragile, needs monitoring, mild depressive tendencies. But the truth is, there was never anything wrong with me. I was just the only one in my family willing to feel pain instead of burying it. Willing to say something when I knew something felt off. But the more I spoke up, the more I became the problem. When I suspected an ex was cheating, Mom said I was paranoid. When I refused to loan Logan money for a startup, everyone called me selfish. When I cut contact for 6 months to breathe, they said I was mentally unstable. And then I married Madison, She was kind, steady, she made me feel safe. And I truly believed I was starting over, building a new kind of family. But I was wrong. I didn't know Madison couldn't escape the gravitational pull of my family's orbit. She didn't just marry me, she married into them. And in the end, she chose them. And me? I'm still the one left out of the picture. Only this time, I carry the last name of the woman who betrayed me. And the wedding ring now sits on the hand of the brother I once trusted most. It all started on a Monday morning that felt completely normal. I was in the kitchen making coffee. Madison was still asleep upstairs. I'd always been an early riser, an old habit from my years working in finance. As I poured hot water into the French press, the front door opened, and in walked Logan. He'd just gotten back from what he called a 5-day tech conference in Houston. He dropped his gym bag on the couch, stretched like he'd just had a deep tissue massage, not a business trip. I didn't even look up, I just said, "Back early." "Yeah, morning flight. Just a little delay," Logan replied casually. I didn't think much of it, not until he walked closer to the dining table. And that's when I caught the scent. Island bliss, sweet, salty, with a hint of coconut. A high-end body mist Madison had bought just a few weeks ago. I remember teasing her about it. "Where are you going, the Bahamas?" She had laughed. "Sometimes I just want to feel like I'm on vacation," she said. But now, that scent was clinging to Logan's shirt, not faintly, not by accident. It was intimate, like he'd spent nights wrapped around the person who wore it. I kept my tone neutral. "What's that smell?" "New cologne." Logan paused, just a beat, then answered a little too quickly. "Must have been the Uber driver. You know how they hang those weird air fresheners now." I nodded, didn't ask anything else, but my heartbeat had already started to change tempo. The next morning, scrolling through Instagram like I always did before work, I saw that Madison had posted a new photo. She was sitting by the ocean, sunset glowing orange-red through her hair, face serene, eyes far away. The caption read, "Solo reset, just me and the ocean, just what I needed." It looked perfect, peaceful, authentic. Until I noticed the reflection. In her sunglasses, barely visible, stood a man just a few feet away, phone held up taking a picture, wearing a gray shirt, and, most importantly, a worn-out Georgia Tech baseball cap with a slightly bent brim. I knew that hat. Logan had worn it since college. I'd told him more than once it looked trashy. He never cared. He called it his lucky charm. He never left it behind. I zoomed in. Then again. Not clear enough for evidence, but clear enough for truth. Madison wasn't alone on that beach. And that 5-day conference in Houston, it was nothing but a cover for a romantic getaway. I just sat there, frozen. At that moment, it wasn't rage that hit me. It was something heavier. The crushing grief of finally seeing the truth you didn't want to believe. I used to believe that if something terrible ever happened to me, at the very least, my family would have my back. But no, not this time. This time when I needed them more than ever. They all decided I was the problem. I called Lauren first. My sister, the same sister who used to sign my absence slips in middle school when I ditched class. The one I thought was the last ally left in this tangled web we called a family. "Lauren, I need you to just listen for a second. I think there's something going on between Madison and Logan." I told her about the scent, about the photo, the reflection in the sunglasses. I even sent her the picture so she could see it for herself. She paused for a few seconds, then let out a sigh. "Ethan, you're doing it again." "Doing what?" "This. You always do this. Whenever things feel out of your control, you start building stories. Remember last year, you were convinced Dad was selling the Savannah house just because he mentioned property taxes? I clenched my phone. But he did meet with a realtor. I wasn't making it up. And did he sell the house? She snapped back. You always worry too much, Ethan. You create drama where there isn't any. And now you're doing it again. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Part anger, part fear. Next, I called my mom, Beverly. Some part of me still hoped that if I just explained everything, if I showed enough evidence, she'd at least care. After a few rings, she answered. I kept my voice as steady as I could. Mom, I need to talk to you seriously. I think Madison and Logan are involved behind my back. There was a pause. Then she spoke in a tone so soft it was chilling. Ethan, you know I love you, right? My stomach dropped. That phrase has never meant anything good. But you need to be realistic about your emotional tendencies. You've always been a bit sensitive. You get anxious, overwhelmed. You imagine worst-case scenarios. Madison's a good wife. Logan adores you. Don't ruin the peace over something you're not even sure about. Mom, I saw the photo. I smelled it on him. This isn't my imagination. Ethan, I understand. But remember, you have a history of mild depressive episodes. Spencer said so the last time you went in for therapy. Maybe this is just... I hung up before she could finish. Spencer, a friend from high school turned therapist. I went to him once after I couldn't sleep, following a failed investment. And now my own mother was using that against me, to discredit everything I said. It felt like I was falling into a bottomless pit, where the truth had no weight, where my emotions were labeled unreliable, just because I had a past. I tried calling my dad, my last hope. He picked up, his voice calm, low, like always. Ethan, your mom talked to me already, and honestly, I think you're blowing this way out of proportion. You work in finance. You should know better than anyone. Real conclusions come from real data. You're drawing wild assumptions from a blurry photo and the scent of some body mist. I said nothing. To them, I wasn't the one being betrayed. I was just the unstable guy causing a scene. And the most painful part of all wasn't the betrayal itself. It was that my entire family chose to perform a play together just to make me question my own sanity. I couldn't scream at them. I couldn't force them to believe me, and I sure as hell couldn't rewrite the story they'd been telling themselves about me for years. So, I did the one thing I knew how to do best. I started collecting evidence. That night, I stopped by a small stationery shop in Midtown Atlanta, picked out a black leather moleskin notebook and a fine tip fountain pen. Simple, precise, no fluff, just like how I needed my life to be again. When Madison went to bed or pretended to, I locked myself in my home office. No music, no phone, just the warm yellow light of a desk lamp. And the sound of a pen sliding across paper. April 12th, Logan returns from Houston Tech Conference. Clothes smell like island bliss. Exact match with Madison's new lotion. He claims, probably the Uber driver's air freshener. Body language, tense. Avoids eye contact. April 13th, Madison posts photo on Instagram. Caption, solo reset. In sunglasses, reflection, a man holding a phone, wearing a Georgia Tech baseball cap, Logan's signature hat, photo location Tybee Island, over 800 miles from Houston. April 14th, called mom, Lauren, dad. All three respond the same way, denial. Redirect the conversation toward emotional instability. Reference old diagnosis from 5 years ago. Mom specifically names Dr. Spencer and mentions mild depression, clearly discussed in advance. I wrote every sentence like I was reconstructing a crime scene, didn't miss a period or a comma. because this was no longer a family issue. This was an organized operation to erase my grip on reality, and I wasn't gonna let that happen. The next day, I called Noah, my best friend from college, cybersecurity guy, used to work in IT for a major insurance firm, now runs a private data investigation service for divorce cases. I didn't sugarcoat it. I think Madison's cheating with my brother, and I need proof, not just to know, to survive. Noah was quiet for a few seconds, then said something that almost broke me. Took you long enough to call. I've been waiting for this. We met at a cafe near Piedmont Park. I handed him the notebook. He read it cover to cover in 15 minutes. Didn't interrupt once. When he finished, he laid his hand flat on the table. This is a start. But if you want to strike back, you'll need more. GPS logs, credit card statements, hotel receipts, and if possible, their browser history. I nodded. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel alone. I wasn't some desperate man begging to be believed. I was a man preparing to fight back. With truth. With data. With the one thing they couldn't dismiss as delusion. It took us nearly a week to gather the first wave of details. Photos, social media data, rough GPS metadata from Madison's posts, and a few suspicious charges on the secondary credit card she used for online shopping. But as Noah said, strong suspicion isn't enough. You want a legal kill shot, you need a lawyer who plays dirty. I asked if he had someone in mind. He said 3 words: Natalie effing Cross. Natalie Cross was one of the most feared divorce and financial forensics attorneys in Atlanta. She used to work in the Federal Financial Fraud Prosecution Unit until she left after a high-profile internal leak involving a U.S. senator. Rumor had it, she once got the CEO of a major bank to drop a lawsuit with a 12-second voice recording. He withdrew the case within 24 hours. Our first meeting was on the 29th floor of a glass tower near Buckhead. Her office wasn't what I expected. No flashy bookshelves, no pretentious awards. Everything was sleek, cold, and surgical, like an operating room. When I walked in, she didn't get up, just gave a small nod. Her eyes scanned me, face to hand, like she was skimming a living case file. She gestured to the seat. Noah gave me the rundown. Now tell me. No emotions, just data. I opened my black moleskin, handed her the printout of the sunglasses reflection, the receipt for the body mist, and screenshots of the solo reset text Madison had sent me. Natalie listened. No nodding, no sympathy, no interruptions. Just one hand on the desk, the other taking notes with a silver pen. When I got to the part about my mom, sister, and dad, how they all used the same language to gaslight me, her eyes narrowed slightly, like she had just mentally circled a key piece of evidence. When I finished, the room went completely silent. Then she spoke, her voice cold and rhythmic, like clockwork. This isn't just infidelity. This is a blend of financial fraud, coordinated psychological manipulation, and, if what you said about account access is true, potentially criminal asset intrusion. I swallowed hard. A part of me already knew that, but hearing it out loud from someone like her still sent a chill down my spine. So, what's the next step? She leaned back slightly, fingers interlaced. I'll need full credit card statements for both you and Madison. 6 months minimum. Any mortgage records, login history from the home computer. A timeline of Logan and Madison's movements from February through April. And, if you authorize it, I'd like to bring in a licensed PI for physical surveillance and photographic evidence. I didn't hesitate. Money's not the issue. I want the truth, and I want justice. She gave the faintest smirk, almost invisible. Good, because justice doesn't come cheap. She opened a drawer, pulled out a contract and a heavy metal pen, pushed them across the table toward me. Retainer, $40,000. Covers full legal process, everything airtight, admissible in court. I signed, not in desperation, not out of impulse, but with a rare clarity. I was no longer the man cast out by his own family. I was the man who just hired a team to expose the truth they've been hiding for years. 1 week after I signed the contract with Natalie, she called me at exactly 7:13 a.m. Just as I was pouring my first cup of coffee. Her voice wasn't rushed, but it was so cold. I had to sit down before she even finished her second sentence. "Ethan, I've just reviewed the mortgage files Madison Thompson co-signed with you. We've got a situation." I didn't say a word, just tightened my grip on the mug. "There's a $100,000 commercial loan drawn from your shared marital assets. Filed 3 months ago. The stated purpose? Launching a fitness business. Legacy Movement Studio. Third-party guarantor on the loan. Logan Thompson." I nearly dropped the cup. "Wait, what? I've never even heard of that gym, and I'm absolutely certain I haven't signed off on any loan recently." Natalie's voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that only comes from dealing with liars for a living. "That's exactly the issue, Ethan. Your signature is on the paperwork, but I have strong reason to believe it's forged." I closed my eyes. Madison's story about the spa trip, Logan's conference in Houston, the way they both flinched whenever I brought up money. Suddenly, all those moments snapped into place, too perfectly, too deliberately. I asked, barely able to breathe, "They used my name to get that money?" "Correct. The funds were pulled from a shared home equity credit line, under your name, due to the higher credit score. Madison is listed as a joint property owner. Logan is named as the business operator. And the gym? It just had its soft opening last week. West Midtown." I laughed, but not the kind of laugh that comes from amusement. The kind that spills out when the final layer of betrayal breaks you. They didn't just stab me in the back emotionally. They gutted me financially, with my own signature. Or at least a very convincing fake. "They planned this," I whispered. Natalie didn't hesitate. "All signs point to a coordinated operation. Withdrawals structured to avoid alerts. Business registered as a community wellness startup. Joint ownership tactics to minimize audit risks." Then, with clinical precision, she said, "Ethan, this is no longer a domestic affair. This is deliberate credit abuse and civil fraud. If you're ready, I can file the lawsuit as early as tomorrow." I didn't respond right away. I stood, walked to the window, looked down at Atlanta still tucked in its early morning fog. People were starting their day. And I had just realized that my life was built on forged documents, silent debt, and well-packaged lies. Even the house I was standing in might not be mine for much longer if I didn't act. I turned back to the table, my voice solid. "Do it. File it." Natalie didn't say anything else. She didn't have to. She knew I had just crossed the line. From the victim to the man ready to strike back. With law, with proof, and with nothing left to lose. I thought I understood their game. But I was wrong. I had no idea they'd take it this far. That evening, I came home after a long meeting. Parked outside were my father's car, my mother's, Lauren's, and Logan's. Madison, of course, was already there, because this was still our home. The lights were on. The front door was already open. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was off. My entire family was seated in the living room, silent, stiff, like they were waiting for a sentencing. And there, sitting dead center on the couch, was Spencer, my old friend, and also a licensed therapist. The same guy who helped me navigate a burnout crisis at 29. I hadn't invited him, and seeing him there felt like getting punched in the chest. My mother spoke first, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. "Ethan, sweetheart, we're all here tonight because we're worried about you." I didn't move. A chill ran straight down my spine. My father, as always, stared at the floor, nodding slowly like a man forced into compliance. Logan leaned back in his chair, arms folded, playing the concerned brother role. Madison avoided my gaze, her hands clenched tightly, like she was bracing to hold a mask together. Then Spencer spoke, voice calm, clinical. "Ethan, I know this is hard to hear, but your recent behavior has raised concerns. Cutting off communication, tracking Madison, signs of paranoia, controlling behavior, and especially some significant financial activity." I cut him off. "You mean spending $40,000 on legal counsel?" He nodded. "Exactly. That kind of decision, given the emotional volatility, suggests you may no longer be in control of your judgment. We're recommending a short-term stay at a wellness facility." My heart stopped. They were trying to have me committed, a so-called wellness facility. But really it was a strategic move to strip me of my legal capacity, declare me unstable, invalidate my lawsuit before it ever reached a judge. Madison stood, walked toward me, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't want this, Ethan, but we can't go on like this anymore. You need rest, time to heal." I looked at each of them, my mother, performing maternal heartbreak with disturbing ease. Logan, dry swallowing, eyes full of calculation. Lauren, arms crossed, cold. My father, empty. Spencer, ready with commitment papers if I voluntarily agreed. And Madison, playing the perfectly reasonable wife. I understood. This was a preemptive strike, a psychological ambush, straight out of the mafia playbook. Convince the target they're the problem, then legally dismantle them while they're too confused to fight back. If I reacted with anger, they'd say I was losing control. If I refused to cooperate, they'd call it protecting the family. I needed a different play. So, I acted. I exhaled, let my shoulders sag, softened my voice, let it tremble just enough. "Maybe. You're all right. I am tired. Maybe a break wouldn't be the worst idea, but please, just give me a week to wrap my head around it. Just 1 week." My mother took my hand, eyes glistening. "Of course, sweetheart. 1 week, and we'll start fresh." I nodded gently. What they didn't know was that they had just handed me the greatest gift of the past 3 months. 1 week of freedom. 1 week to prepare. 1 week to bring their entire world crashing down. Exactly 1 week later, on the night of my 35th birthday, the family gathered again. This time at an upscale Italian restaurant on the 27th floor of a high-rise overlooking Atlanta. Soft lights, expensive wine, elegant decor. Exactly the kind of setting my mother adored. She always believed that if things looked perfect on the outside, the lies within would be easier to swallow. I was the one who invited them, made the reservation myself, chose the seating arrangements, and for the entire week leading up to it, I played my part flawlessly. The remorseful son, the fragile husband, the recovering patient who had finally seen the light. I called each of them, apologized, admitted I'd been stressed, even said, "I'm seriously considering that wellness center, Mom." That line earned me an 800-word birthday message from her, full of love and relief. But I'd prepared more than just the menu. I'd prepared the seating and the arrival of a few very special guests. Dinner began like always. Hollow toasts, fake hugs, and that smug look on Logan and Madison's faces, like they were about to enjoy their final, delicious victory. After the main course, Logan stood up with his glass. "If I may, let's raise a toast to Ethan, a man who's been through so much, who's learning to forgive, and who chose peace over resentment. Happy birthday, brother, to fresh starts." Clinks of glasses. "Happy birthday," murmurs around the table. I stood up, quietly, didn't raise my glass, just set my fork down gently. "Thank you, Logan. That speech was perfect. But tonight isn't about me. It's about the truth. And I think it's time we all faced it." The table went still. My mother looked up, eyes narrowing. Lauren put her phone down. Madison stiffened. Logan's jaw tensed. I gave a small signal, and at that exact moment, Natalie Cross, dressed in a sleek black suit, her hair tightly pulled back, stepped out from the bar area. She walked toward the table like a velvet-coated bullet, carrying a thick black folder embossed in silver. "Thompson family, confidential investigation." "I believe some of you have heard my name before," she said, calm and sharp. "But tonight, I'm not here to talk. I'm here to present the facts." She placed individual folders in front of each person. Logan, Madison, my mother, my father, Lauren. Madison opened hers first. On the very first page, a high-res photo of her kissing Logan inside a hotel elevator in Napa Valley. She exhaled sharply, like she'd been punched in the gut. Logan tore his open. Amex receipts, hotel bookings, gift purchases from Tiffany & Company bank statements showing joint accounts with Madison, highlighted in yellow. My mother froze at page 2. A transcript of her phone call discussing how to keep Ethan calm just a little longer until Logan's promotion and Madison's business stabilize. Silence. No music. No clinking silverware. Just the sound of my heart pounding. Not from fear, but from the raw thrill of watching every mask finally fall. I looked each of them in the eye. This isn't about rage. It's about clarity. This isn't revenge. It's me reclaiming my right to exist as a man with emotions, memory, and the truth. No one said a word. Logan finally stammered, You can't just investigate your own family." Natalie cut in, her voice like steel. "Unauthorized use of marital assets, financial fraud, and coordinated concealment of illegal activity do not fall under family matters. They fall under criminal law." And that was just the opening act. I still had one card left, and I planned to play it right after dessert. If the truth is a knife, then what I revealed at that dinner table was just the first cut. As dessert arrived, a small tiramisu with a candle stuck in the center, I stood up again and nodded toward Natalie. From her briefcase, she pulled out a cream-colored envelope sealed with red wax. She placed it gently in front of my father, Daniel Thompson. I looked him in the eye. "Dad, I think it's time you knew this." He frowned. He was a man of few words, rarely showed emotion. But I saw it, his hands trembling beneath the table. I gave Natalie the go-ahead. Without opening a file, she said calmly, 2 months ago, my client requested a private DNA test to determine direct paternity between himself and Mr. Daniel Thompson. The results show there is no genetic match. The table shook. My mother dropped her spoon. It clanged loud against the plate. Logan's eyes widened. Madison looked like she'd forgotten how to breathe. I took a deep breath, then turned to Uncle Charles, my father's younger brother, the man who had lived quietly, never married, no children, and who, for 35 years, had never once looked me in the eye for more than 10 seconds. I spoke slowly. At the same time, I also obtained a DNA sample from Charles, legally. Through a personal item at the Spring Festival, the results confirmed I am his biological son. Silence. No one said a word, no one needed to. Everyone understood. I wasn't Daniel's son. I was the result of an affair between my mother and her brother-in-law. My mother brought her hand to her mouth, whispered, "Ethan, you don't understand." I cut her off, not with anger, but with a pain that had lived in my chest for decades. "No, you don't understand." I used to wonder why Dad never hugged me like he meant it, why he looked at me like a stranger, why Logan got all the love while I was always being measured against him. I thought it was because I wasn't good enough, but it wasn't that. It was because I was never truly part of this family. Logan turned to Mom, his voice a stunned whisper. "Mom, what did you do?" She broke. Tears streamed down her face. It was a mistake. Just one night. Charles promised he'd never tell. But after you were born, I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. My father stood. No yelling, no screaming. He just walked away, shoulders heavy, like a man finally setting down a lifetime of weight he never asked to carry. I watched him leave, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty, because truth may hurt, but it frees you, and a lie, no matter how many times it's repeated, is still a lie. That night, I walked out of the restaurant with no gifts, no birthday wishes, no cake, but I left with something far more valuable: freedom. And tomorrow, I begin a life that doesn't wait for anyone's approval. Within just 3 weeks of that birthday night, everything began to unravel, not in explosions, but in a series of quiet, unstoppable cracks. Natalie wasted no time. The very next morning, she filed a civil suit in Fulton County Court, alleging credit fraud, signature forgery, asset misappropriation, and conspiracy to defraud joint property ownership against both Madison and Logan. The twist? Because Logan was listed as the managing partner of Legacy Movement Studio, he was the direct recipient of the funds withdrawn from the home equity credit line. And that property? Legally, it was under my name. 6 days later, the FBI got involved. When I heard Logan had been summoned for federal questioning, I didn't feel triumphant, just relieved. He was so used to being forgiven, so used to getting away with things. Not this time. Madison didn't fare much better. Once the lawsuit became public, the bank immediately froze all accounts associated with her, including the joint ones. An investor pulled out of the gym just 48 hours later. And online, clients flooded social media with posts calling her a fake entrepreneur and accusing her of stealing money from her husband to fund her side hustle. The gym filed for bankruptcy within 10 days. I remember exactly when I got the email from Madison's attorney. It was short. "My client is willing to settle if Mr. Ethan agrees to drop the lawsuit and split assets 70-30. I didn't respond. Natalie did, with just one line: "We'll see you in court." But the harshest blow wasn't dealt to Madison, not even to Logan. It was my mother. 1 week after the DNA revelation, and after Natalie submitted phone transcripts and secret messages between my mom and Logan to the civil court, I filed a motion to revoke her guardianship of Ellie, Lauren's daughter, whom she had been caring for since Lauren's divorce. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it for Ellie. Among the messages Natalie retrieved, one voice recording stood out. My mother had told Logan, "As long as Ethan doesn't lose it, we keep the house. And Ellie, she needs to learn which side is right." That was enough. Lauren's attorney didn't even need to argue. It spoke for itself. The Superior Court of Fulton County issued a temporary suspension of Beverly Thompson's guardianship. They reopened the psychological and home environment evaluation for Ellie, and for the first time in years, Lauren finally did what she should have done long ago. She chose her daughter over silence. I visited Ellie at her first court session. She ran up to me, threw her arms around my waist, and whispered, "Mom said Uncle Ethan saved our whole family." I held her close, didn't say anything, because if I opened my mouth, I would have cried. In the end, the family that once used silence, denial, and manipulation to keep me in place was forced to face the law, one by one, not with rage, but with truth, not through vengeance, but through a legal system they thought they could control. 2 months after Madison moved out, I still kept the curtains she picked, not because I missed her, but because every time sunlight slipped through those thin slits, I remembered how long I had lived in the dark, without even knowing it. I no longer live in that house. After the final court hearing, I moved into a small apartment near Piedmont Park, with trees, clean air, and, most importantly, no traces of the Thompson family. I started over, not with a grand speech, not with some bold declaration, just in small ways, learning how to cook real meals, attending therapy consistently, and writing the things I once couldn't say. Not because I was afraid of being judged, but because I feared no one would believe me. Lauren and I began speaking again. She never said sorry with words, but through actions. She enrolled Ellie in a better school, got herself a new job, and most importantly, stopped letting our mother interfere in their lives. As for my father, we're no longer father and son, not really. But every week, he sends me a text with the same question. "You doing okay?" And for the first time, I believe he truly wants to know. Logan and Madison, I don't keep tabs on them anymore. They chose their path, and they'll face their consequences. I don't care whether they regret it or not, because forgiveness doesn't require permission. It only requires freedom inside yourself. Last week, while walking past a small shop in Decatur, I saw a sign in the window. It read, "Strength doesn't mean you're unbreakable. Strength means you still rise, even when no one rises with you." I bought that sign, hung it right by my front door. Now every morning when I leave for work, I see it. And I remember, I was once a man betrayed by his wife, by his brother, by his own mother. I was once gaslit into a psych evaluation, branded as the family's problem. I once believed I wasn't enough, not lovable enough, not strong enough to leave. But then, I learned something. No one gets to define you except you, not them. Not a diagnosis, not a family's distorted memory of who you're supposed to be. You have the right to draw the line. You have the right to say no. You have the right to live the life you choose, even if others call it selfish, because if you don't protect yourself, no one else will. I'm not telling this story to be pitied. I'm telling it so someone, maybe you, understands this. Bravery doesn't mean you're not afraid. Bravery means you keep going, even when your hands shake and your voice cracks. This is where my story ends, but my healing, that's still unfolding. And this time, I don't need anyone to walk beside me. I've learned how to walk alone and still keep going.